Hello everyone, my name is Brandy. Thank you for coming to my channel to watch this video. If you're new here, hi. If you're from my Instagram or my Facebook page or you've been here before, hi. Thank you for coming back. Today I'm just going to do a get ready with me. I actually was getting ready to go hang out with my boyfriend's family for his mother's birthday, so I'm going right in with my Hourglass Veil Mineral Primer and dotting that on my face. And then I'm just gonna rub that in with my fingers. And patting it in a little bit. And now I'm going to go in with my e.l.f. Poreless Putty Primer, and I'm going to use this just on my forehead because most of my skin is oily combo, oily and dehydrated, but my forehead has been very dry and kind of itchy lately, so I use something a little more hydrating. And the Poreless Putty has a nice pore-filling texture, so it also smooths over dryness pretty well. So I'm only using that on my forehead. Alright, and now I'm going to go in with foundation. I'm using the Colourpop Pretty Fresh Hyaluronic Hydrating Foundation. I've been really liking this. I use the shade 55N if you're curious. And just pumping that onto the back of my hand, about one full pump. And then dotting it on, and I do have pretty new microbladed brows. I've had them for a little over a week, so that's why you'll see the dots on my forehead. That's why they're so far up, and that's why I do not blend them over my eyebrows. But other than that, I'm dotting it all over. And now I'm going to go in with my favorite foundation brush, the Morphe E44. It's a pretty densely packed, round, kind of kabuki style brush. It's pretty big, but I really like how it blends out foundation. So just using a mixture of light swiping motions and patting motions to blend out my foundation. And this is what I'm talking about, being careful on my forehead, just going around my brows, not really blending my foundation onto them because they're mostly healed. The scabbing part has pretty much stopped, but they are still healing, so just keeping them clean. Alright, foundation is all done. And now I'm going in with my Makeup Revolution Conceal and Define Concealer. This is the original one, not the hydrating one. And I apply that under my eyes. I don't do like a big triangle or anything, just a tiny bit on the inner corners where I do have some darkness. And then on my Cupid's bow, just to highlight a little bit. And I'm using a Sephora angled concealer brush to blend that out. And I do this very gently since the skin around your eyes is very sensitive and thin. So just doing gentle patting motions until it's blended out. Alright, so now on to setting powder. This is my favorite. It's the Dermablend Loose Setting Powder. This is just the translucent shade. And I just get a bit into the cap, and that's what I'm going to work with. And before going in with the powder, I am going to pat over my concealer one more time to make sure there's no creases, because you don't want to set your creases into place. And taking a dry beauty blender that's pretty pointy, and I just very gently press the powder in. I'm not really baking. I don't use a super excess amount of powder. I wouldn't call it baking at all. It's just using the sponge to set my under eye instead of a brush. So now I'm going to set the rest of my face using a Sigma powder brush. And I'm going to dip that into the powder and tap off the excess. And I always start with my face setting powder starting around my nose and around my mouth, because that is where I usually get creasing if I get any, so I make sure to set that in place first to avoid any creasing. And I'm just going to repeat this all over my face using tapping motions, not swiping motions, because that can move around the product underneath. Sip of coffee before I move on. Delicious. And now I'm going to go into contouring, and I'm going to preface this part by saying I don't usually contour my nose like this. I'm not really sure why I did, and I've only had this contour powder for a few days. I don't hate it, but I'm not a huge fan of it. It's just, it doesn't blend out nearly as nicely as my Kevyn Aucoin light sculpting powder. So I'm not that happy with the nose contour, but it's not a big deal. By the end of the video, when my makeup is done, it looks fine. It's just not my favorite, but just contouring my nose here. And now I'm gonna go in with this brush. I wanna say this is a Real Techniques brush. And I'm just going in with that to contour my cheeks and underneath of my jawline, but I'm gonna start with my cheeks. And first I pat the color on and then I blend out, but I blend it out very, very gently in circular motions, just so I don't disturb the foundation or remove any coverage. And doing the same on the other side now. And you will see I am not perfectly symmetrical. This side of my face that I'm working on right now is different than the other side. The other side of my face is my favorite side of my face. That's like my good side. If you know what I mean, then you know what I mean. But you can see when I do like side-by-side comparisons like that, one side of my face is very different than the other. But contouring my jawline now. And still, this Essence contouring powder, contouring duo, not my favorite, like I said, but it works fine. Alright, and now I'm going straight into bronzer. I'm using the NARS Laguna bronzer, which has been my favorite lately. And I'm going to use this e.l.f. brush. And I use a pretty light hand with this bronzer because it is pretty pigmented, but it blends really nicely and I really like the tone of it. It's not too warm to where it looks orange on my skin. I think it's a really nice shade. And now we're moving into one of my favorite steps of makeup. We're gonna move on to blush. And I use this e.l.f. angled blush brush. And I decided to go with MAC blush in the shade Mocha, which is pretty new to me and I've really been liking it. And I always put blush on my nose. Some people like that, some people don't. I do. So if you don't like it, don't come for me, please. It's personal preference. And I put a little bit on my chin as well. I'm not sure if that does anything, but it's a thing I do. And then just patting and gently blending that blush in. For the same reason, I don't do a lot of heavy swiping or buffing type blending once my foundation is on, because I don't want any of that coverage to move around. But I love blush. It's one of my favorite parts of doing my makeup, like I said. Alright, and now another one of my favorite parts of my makeup. I'm trying to decide on a highlighter. It's a hard decision. I have quite a few to choose from, but I decided to go with Pure Afterglow, which I got because of Raw Beauty Christie's recommendation. And going in with a Morphe brush. And down the bridge of my nose, Cupid's bow. And then the high points of the cheek. All the typical highlighting places. Alright, now I'm going in with my Catrice Dewy Glow Fixing Spray. I love this spray. I believe I started using it because of Taylor Wynn. But it has a really nice sprayer. I've gone through, I don't know how many of those, probably like 6 bottles at this point. And I'm gonna go ahead and use my fan to dry that down before I move on. Alright, so now moving on to eyebrows. Like I said, my eyebrows are microbladed, but they're a little lighter than I want them to be because they're still healing and they are a tiny bit patchy after the scabbing. So I'm just going in with my NYX micro brow pencil to fill them in and make them a little bit darker. But I used to have to completely draw on my brow shape every day, and it took me at least 5 minutes, and filling my brows in is so much faster now. I don't dread it anymore like I used to. All right, the brows are all filled in. And now I'm going to go in with a brow gel. I'm using the Colourpop Brow Boss Gel in dark brown. And I'm just going to quickly run them through my brows to define the actual hairs a little bit more. And now for something a little more exciting, moving on to eye makeup. I'm using the Colourpop, their new Sunflower collection. I'm going to be using the Little Ray of Sunshine palette, and a little bit later I will be using one of the liners from the collection, the cream gel liners. But first, getting into the palette. It's a nice little summery fall transition type color story. And I'm just grabbing a fluffy blending brush. And I decided to go in with the shade Happy Place. It's like a light yellow beige shade, but then I remembered I didn't use any eye primer. So I'm gonna go ahead and use my Smashbox Photo Finish Lid Primer, one of my favorites. And then I'm gonna blend that in with a fluffy Real Techniques brush. And now I'm continuing on with that shade Happy Place on a fluffy blending brush. And just blending my little heart away. If you ever ask for eyeshadow tips, pretty much everyone will tell you blend, 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 and I absolutely agree with that. Blend until your hand's about to fall off. If your eyeshadow doesn't look good, blend it some more. If it still doesn't look good, blend it some more. All right, so I'm pretty happy with that at this point. I've brought it out a little bit to create the shape I want, and it's very blended. So now I'm going to go in with this brush. I believe this is a Real Techniques brush. And I'm going to be deciding what shade to use next. And I decided to go with the shade Chillin', which is like a burnt orangey reddy brown shade, and I'm going to be putting that on the outer corner and blending it into the crease. And there is quite a bit of fallout on this eye because I did load the brush quite a bit, but you'll see in a little bit the fallout wipes away very easily. It's not a big deal. All right, so now I'm gonna go back into that shade Chillin' with the same brush. I'm gonna go on the other eye and just repeat the process and just blend that out until it's matching the first side. And just going back into that same shade again, just evening everything out. Now I'm going to go in with that center yellow shade called Sunnies. And I'm going to pack that over the edge of the color I was just working with. So packing it on first and then very lightly blending it so that that color blends out into a nice yellow. And I'm just going to keep repeating that until I'm happy with it. And now repeating that on the other eye. Before moving on, I am going to take a tapered brush and I'm going to wipe away that fallout, which, like I said, it wipes right away, no big deal at all. It's all good. Now I'm going in with this little elf brush and I'm going to dip into the darkest shade in the palette, which is a brown called Sun Giant. And I'm just working that into the very outer corner and then working it into the crease, but not blowing it out too much. I just want to darken up and define mostly the outer corner. Alright, so time for the lower lash line. Taking that same small brush and going into that yellow in the middle and packing that on and blending it onto the lower lash line. Make some dumb faces. And I'm taking an e.l.f. C eyeshadow brush and I'm gonna run that through my color switch to get the previous color off. And then I'm gonna go into that brown And I'm going to run that right against the lower lash line to smoke it out just a little bit. Which, if this part's hard to see, I apologize. I think I had my mirror too low, and then I tried to catch my mistake here so you guys could actually see what I was doing. And now I'm going to be going in with the Colourpop Super Shock eyeshadow in the shade IRL, and I'm going to be patting that onto my eyelids using my finger. And now I'm going to highlight my inner corner with this Super Shock shadow in the shade Ladybird. I specifically bought this Super Shock shadow for an inner corner highlight. And now I'm going to go in with the cream gel liner. I wasn't sure which one I was going to use, but I went with the metallic yellow, and that one is called Sub-Zero. So I'm going to open that up, and then I'm going to use it in my waterline. And then just taking that e.l.f. C eyeshadow brush and just blending the lower lash line shadow just a little bit more. And now we're going to do some eyeliner. I'm using the House Labs by Lady Gaga liquid liner. It's a felt tip. I got it on Amazon. It's around 20 bucks. And I'm going to start off by lining right against my upper lash line, as close as I can get to the lashes. And just going to get that as thin or thick as I think I'm going to be wanting, depending on if I want a big wing or a small wing or maybe no wing at all. About to start my wing, and I do mess up right here and I accidentally get a little dot where I don't want any liner, so I'll fix that later. But I always start my wing by starting at the very outer corner and extending it outwards as far as I think I might want it. And then I try to do one fluid motion and connect it with the liner I did along my lash line. And I'm going to try to do the same thing on the other side now. You know the struggle. Eyeliner doesn't always match on both sides, but you do the best you can to get them to match. And now I'm just going to go back and forth making tiny little adjustments to the wing, the length, the thickness, whatever I think I need to adjust to try to get it to match, because that's the goal. You want your wings to match. They don't always cooperate, but you give it your best try. And now I'm ready to try and fix that little dot of eyeliner that I accidentally got there. I'm gonna go in first with my Makeup Revolution concealer that I used earlier, which you'll see it doesn't really completely cover it up much. So I did go over it with some powder foundation to fix the color a little more, and now I'm going to go over it with a tiny bit of eyeshadow just to make everything blend back in. Now it's time for mascara. I'm going to be using my Too Faced Better Than Sex mascara, and I'm going to curl my lashes first. Alright, mascara's done. And I'm going to go in with a lip product. I'm going to be using the Sephora Cream Lip Stain in the shade number 33, which is one of my favorite nude lipsticks. And if you haven't used the Sephora Cream Lip Stains, they're not really a lip stain. I don't really know why they're called that. They're just a nice matte liquid lipstick. They smell delicious, and they're very pigmented, and they wear really well. So I definitely recommend them. They're sold at Sephora, obviously, and I think they're like 14 bucks, so they're not too bad. And here's the final look. Now I'm going to pose for you so you can see all the angles and appreciate the work I just did. Not one of my favorite looks I've ever done, but it was fun to film, and now I'm going to go to the little birthday get together. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye.